Hey Treasure History! Welcome to your first day of Unit 2! Congratulations on finishing Unit 1, and I hope you have a wonderful start to your new unit. Mesopotamia. Today's essential question is, what were the advantages and disadvantages of the geography of Mesopotamia? Remember that geography means the lay of the landforms, the physical features. So we'll be talking about how the physical features in Mesopotamia both helped and also hurt the people that lived there. When I say pause, please pause your video and copy the essential question in your notebook. Remember to skip one line and write the question neatly across the top of your page. Pause. Now please draw your vertical line for your notes. Today, remember to circle key vocab as you write your notes. Key vocab is any word that's important for today's lesson or that we've already covered in class. So you already know the 4 geographical features that are necessary for humans to settle. Today, I'm going to transport you magically back to a place that had all 4 of these geographic features. The place where the first successful farming societies in the world began. The cradle of civilization, a place called Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is a word that means land between the rivers. Can you see which 2 rivers were important to Mesopotamia? Mesopotamia was the perfect place for farming. Besides being called the cradle of civilization, meaning that it was the place where farming civilizations began, Mesopotamia had another nickname, the Fertile Crescent. Can you make an inference about why Mesopotamia had this nickname? The farmers owed their fertile soil to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. These rivers flooded every spring because the Zagros Mountains, which were northeast of Mesopotamia, had snow on top of them. And every spring, as the weather warmed up, snow would slowly melt down the side of the mountain, trickling down into the river, causing the river to rise higher and higher until it flooded. Once the water receded back into the river, it left silt, which was this incredibly rich, fertile soil that was perfect for farming. Here's a picture of the Tigris River from today. See how it still floods to fertilize crops, and people still today plant crops next to this river. This is a picture of silt. See how dark and wet and just like muddy it is. It looks like the best kind of dirt for growing plants. Please pause your video and write down what silt is. Remember to circle key vocab, so silt would be a good word to circle. Farmers were able to plant huge amounts of crops because their dirt was so fertile from the silt. Mesopotamian farmers planted a lot of wheat and barley, and since they could plant so much, they had surplus food. So of course, not everybody had to worry about where their food was coming from anymore. Some people worried about clothes, some people worried about making crafts, taking care of the house. Some people were farmers, some people took care of the animals, but everybody had a different job, specialization. As a result of this specialization, an advanced civilization grew. Also with their surplus crops, merchants began to trade the extra food with other civilizations. They used the Tigris and Euphrates like a highway to get to these new places. But life wasn't all rainbows and sunshine in Mesopotamia. The geography of Mesopotamia also brought some challenges. For example, The flooding of the Tigris and Euphrates was sometimes unpredictable. If it rained a lot for a few days or a few weeks, the rivers could flood when nobody was expecting it. The floods could destroy houses and kill people, just like floods can still do today. On the other hand, if there was a really dry spring, or during the times of the year like summer when it didn't rain very much, the rivers wouldn't flood and there would be no silt. Over time, the Mesopotamians learned how to deal with these challenges. To deal with the droughts, so that they could still farm, they dug irrigation ditches. The irrigation ditches led to the river, and they would bring water to the fields all year long, no matter if it had rained or not, because they had gotten their water from the Tigris and Euphrates. Another challenge for Mesopotamians was their flat land. We know that they needed flat land for farming, but at the same time, they didn't have very many natural barriers to protect them from enemies. If someone wanted to invade their land, they could do that pretty easily, except from the mountains. If they wanted to come from the northeast, the Zagros Mountains would protect Mesopotamia. But from pretty much any other direction, enemy armies could come and try to invade this fertile land to take for themselves. But the Mesopotamians were smart, and they learned how to make bricks out of mud from the banks of the rivers. They built walls around their cities, man-made barriers to protect them from enemies. So this is what the walls would have looked like, and this is some of those walls left over today. The third challenge for Mesopotamians was that their natural resources were very limited. They were surrounded by desert, as you already know, and also mountains. But none of those things gave them very many natural resources. They didn't have many forests, so that they couldn't find very much wood. But they needed wood and stone for building things. So to deal with this challenge, they traded with the nomads who lived in the mountains and in the deserts. And they also traded with African kingdoms along the Nile. And they also made their way more towards Asia and made trade routes with people to the east. Here's a picture of some traders, and this is real art that came from Mesopotamia. As you can see, Mesopotamia really depended on two geographical features for survival. What were those geographical features? Now I'm going to ask you to do a challenge in your notebook. Underneath your definition of silt, I need you to write geography of Mesopotamia, and then make two boxes, advantages and disadvantages. An advantage is a good thing. A disadvantage is a bad thing. I want you to try to make a list of the advantages, the good things, and the disadvantages, the bad, about living in the geography of Mesopotamia. So think about the good things and the bad, and see if you can come up with 3 different things that were good and 3 different things that were bad about living in Mesopotamia. Please press pause and give yourself a minute or two to come up with as many as you can. After you do that, you can check your work by going on in this video. Here are some advantages and disadvantages. Check your work from before and also fix your list. Make sure that these 3 things are inside your notebook for each box. Press pause if you need more time to write. So even though their geography presented challenges, their land was perfect for farming, and thus it was perfect for the first human civilizations to begin. Now you will practice by reading a passage with your partner about the Fertile Crescent, Mesopotamia. Please X out of this tab and go back to your playlist for practice.